is to go to year 2 or 3 and make sure that an organization that represents the true values of Missourians for their best interest happens, I could see him doing that.
So you're not sure? I'll give you a prediction.
No,
I think he's going to
believe
stick
he
with
would,
it.
but
I actually think he's going to stick with it.
I think he would. I
I
think
think
he's that principled, but I don't make it a distraction because I think he's a strong enough leader that it won't be a distraction. That's what I'm saying.
I think he's a little ticked off. I mean, Missouri Right to Life has treated him aggressively. They have been a foremost opponent of Mike Kehoe. And I think
I get that. Look,
all he's done is pass their legislation, forward their priorities, make Missouri a zero abortion state, and all they've done is basically kick sand in his face.
Look, except here's the thing about this about Kehoe is that that him being mad at something, he's a much bigger leader than that. And I know you didn't mean that, but I'm just saying is that, Mike Kehoe might not forget, but I think that he's the kind of guy that he doesn't get caught up in those things. So whether he likes them, no matter they treated him bad, his focus is going to be, are they representing as a principal voice in Missouri what people, Catholics like himself, evangelicals like myself, believe that the pro-life movement should look like. And to that regard, I think that's where he ends up.
So let's look forward to the Missouri Senate, something you know a lot about. Jason Bean, my senator. I was kind of proud of him. Obviously, the Senate has had a lot of acrimony the last 6 years. Jason Bean stepped up and said, you know what, we're not going to have a leadership race. I'm going to support Tony Luetkemeyer for floor leader. I thought that was quite a gracious and statesmanlike gesture.
Yeah, Jason's a class act. I thought it was fascinating that Cindy got involved in a leadership race other than own. That normally does not happen that way because of just the risk.
And I think that's got some issues with it. Even winning it, I think it's gonna be interesting to see how that works out when the pro tem weighs in on selecting our floor leader.
So, Scott, here's the bigger problem: is 2 years from now is that this will be the first time that we have not had we've had a pro tem and a majority leader coming open. So one is there'll be no one leading the caucus effort to elect Republicans in the fall, because whether you like it or not, you can say, well, Cindy's still the leader and Tony's still the majority leader, but lobbyists don't give money to term limited leaders. They are very pragmatic. And so where the money is going to go is everybody who wants to be majority leader or pro tem. And what's also going to happen is everybody that wants to be majority leader or pro tem, 4, 5, 6 people, are all going to be trying to recruit their candidate, no matter how good they are, how good of a leader be. But if they're a vote, I'm going to want you to run, and then I'm going to fund you. And so we're going to see all this money going all over the place to everybody's favorite candidate for leadership. And imagine the kind of Senate to manage at that point when every race you got in, it was a leadership race. I mean, it was a race that was being manipulated because of who was going to get into leader. So I get elected and 3 guys running for leadership gave money against me. Well, how am I going to work with them? And look, I these leaders are good enough to forget it and step aside like Jason Bean, but there are others that are not. There are others that will keep that scorecard. So you're going to have, because this dysfunctional Senate, the only thing I think they can do is probably move up the election for pro tem, like the House did with the speaker potentially this time, and maybe elect a pro tem this year, so that person can de facto lead, and it takes one race off, so it's a lot more limited of how that will impact the upcoming Senate elections. But there's a cluster.
I think this guy could tell you that's fraught with danger moving that election up. Boy, I tell you, I don't know how confident I would be if I won that election. There you go. I don't know how confident I'd be. Oh, speaking of, November 25th, are you going to come to Jeff City for the unveiling of Ron Richards' bust?
Boy, I try to avoid Jeff City whenever I can.
Oh, it's for a great cause.
To the extent of showing respect to Ron, talk about a guy who was pure heart. I mean, that guy was just sort of, point me and I'll run. And I don't care what critique you want to make of Ron, but he had a heart of gold. He just wanted to get stuff done. I watched him with the St. Louis group that he didn't know him from Madden, hadn't ever met him, had no interest necessarily in St. Louis, but he's like, boys, what do you need? And I'll do it. And sure enough, he did it. Jay Wasson was sort of his enforcer between the two of them.
Yep.
If St. Louis or Cape Girardeau or East Butler County needs something, they were on it.
I tell you, there's no one more deserving. I think it's so outstanding that the man that served as the leader of both chambers will have his bust in the Capitol. David, I want to thank you for the time. I certainly appreciate it. It's going to be interesting. I think I think there's not a lot to cover. Mike Kehoe's going to run a transition that's pretty workmanlike. What about Andrew Bailey? It's possible by tomorrow night the United States could have a new attorney general, but the state of Missouri could be missing one.
I think Mike Kehoe is going to have an appointment early on his administration. I think Andrew Bailey, who beat our friend Will Scharf, you beat Leonard Leo, you beat Will, you beat a lot of out-of-state money. I think Donald Trump respects people who beat his team, and certainly Will was part of his team, and that's not disrespectful to Will, who is an incredibly capable, and I expect him to be on the Supreme Court or to have some significant role in American politics in the future. But with that being said, I think Andrew is going to be being considered for multiple things. I think that he has a family dynamic that he has great respect for. So my guess is he's weighing those dynamics versus his career. It's not a question of whether Trump wants to appoint him. It's more of a question of whether Andrew feels that this is the right timing for his family. And I don't know that from talking to Andrew. I know it from knowing Andrew. With that said, I'll say one other thing, Scott, is that I think we've seen a closing of the first chapter of this generational change that we saw in the 60s, we saw now, and that the Democrat Party, if they can't quit attacking Trump, and if they haven't figured out that the losses on election night were much more severe than showed, they should have ended up Republicans with 58 Senate seats and probably about 240 plus in the House. My sense, because of their organization and money, they were able to avoid those kind of losses. As a result, I think the woke versus the winning in that party is going to fight another 2 years, which could actually mean that Trump doesn't lose much of anything in the interim or in the midterms. And I think if they continue to attack Trump, who's a lame duck president, who's expendable, they're going to set the Republicans up for maybe 8 or 12 more years. And I say that if you look at Nixon in 68 sort of came after the Johnson, Kennedy, and all that. If Nixon would have gotten in his scandal, we probably would have seen Nixon 8 years, Reagan coming in 76 for another 4 or 8 years. And so I do think we are going to see, unless the Republicans just shoot themselves, I think we're going to see Republicans get stronger. And I would argue that Trump actually will start putting the genie back in the bottle, meaning that a lot of these people who associate with Trump, who are outsiders trying to blow everything up, I think that Trump, now being a president who wants to get stuff done, is going to be pushing those people back in the bottle because they're going to get in the way of actually getting stuff done. And to that regard, that could be what unifies the party moving forward.
Who replaces Andrew Bailey? Who's on the list for that?
Well, you've got a childhood friend of Kehoe's, Bill Corrigan, who is sort of a principled prince of the legal profession. Kurt Schaefer could be. If Mike Kehoe wants someone in the bullpen that's a pit bull, who's only took on Nixon and is a loyalist, it could be him. I know that probably Tony Luetkemeyer will have, will put his chops in on that. And I apologize to the other 10 people who are going to call me after this call and yell at me why I didn't bring them up. But I think we have a very good group of lawyers that could fill that spot. And that's
what about a Vivek Malik?
I would love to see.
You get 2 appointments.
So
the old Parson.
I don't know if Vivek still has. I don't know if Vivek still has his law license in Missouri, which actually I don't think Attorney General has to. But
they probably need that.
I think that you want someone there who's really a lawyer's lawyer, and I think Vivek has a much more broader community, sense about himself, business, law, immigration, other things. I think treasurer is something that I think he's enjoying, and representing a group of Indians that have never held a statewide position. I think that's an honor. To that respect, my sense is that you need to appoint someone who's a lawyer's lawyer, who has really been aggressive in the judicial areas, aggressive in courts, things like that. Because look, Scott, the attorney general is like 200 or 300 employees. You're shaping the next generation of prosecutors and judges. I mean, that's the guys out of law school, the guys that have their first job in the AG's office. Those are the guys who are going to shape the judiciary. So I'd love to see someone who loves the practice of the law in a way that, like a Mark Richardson or people like that who we know truly love the law, in that position and making a difference. Maybe Todd Richardson pops up.
Wow. Now that would be that's the exciting name. I think David Gregory, just off that Senate win's too quick. I also don't think the Republicans want to go ask Chesterfield their opinion again for a while. Bill Hardwick has a similar background to Andrew Bailey. He's someone I thought is an interesting pick. The list isn't as long for Republicans as you might think, but it is pretty quality.
I agree. Look, we've got a lot of guys at the different levels of judiciary that are very strong. If I'm gonna put in a plug for Todd Richardson, I better put a plug in for Chris Limbaugh, a multi-generational family that has always been a good steward in terms of the judiciary.
It wouldn't surprise me if he's appointed to a federal judgeship before this is even fleshed out. I mean, I think Chris is on the top of the list to maybe a federal judge under the Republican administration with the Republican Senate.
Chris is a great guy. Now, I think he's got a lot of opportunity in a lot of places.
Yeah. David Barkley, thank you so much for the time. I certainly appreciate it. We'll watch the speaker's race, the AG appointments, and all that going forward. Hope you'll come back maybe around the holidays. We can, instead of getting testing Barkley, we can get Christmas Barkley.
And don't take my predictions seriously, since I predicted that Trump would be a loser in this thing, and the number one race you could predict, I flubbed up on. I was right on the Senate and the House, but on where it really mattered, you could have been spinning or tossing a coin and gotten a better result.
Well, obviously it's much better TV if you're wrong. So I certainly appreciate the fact that we can make fun of you about it. David Barkley, Dean of the Missouri Republican Party, thank you so much for the time, sir. I appreciate it.
You got it, sir. Thank you.
That was David Barkley. You will never find a person who knows more about Missouri politics, actually winning and actually accomplishing things at Missouri politics than David Barkley. Sunday, this week in Missouri politics, Kelton, we have two freshman legislators that are going to be on the show. Then I think we have Sharon Jones going to join us, Austin Peterson. But our featured guest for our pre-Thanksgiving special will be the man who helps bring you lunch to your table on Thanksgiving Day, Garrett Hawkins, the president of rural Missouri, the president of Missouri Farm Bureau, the man who's adorned in this beautiful Caleb Jones painting up here on the wall. Thank you all so much for joining us. We're very grateful. We are thankful for you, and we'll see you Sunday for This Week in Missouri.